Hello, my name is Deb Caton, and I am so glad to be a part of IFFGD's 30th anniversary edition of the Nancy and Bill Norton Patient Education Series. I want to thank Carolyn Eiler and the IFFGD for asking me to share my patient story with you today. If there is anything I have learned while living with a functional GI disorder, it is that while we may all share an understanding of living with it, each of us has a unique experience. I have learned that what works for one person will likely not work for another. This is a constant source of frustration for many of us. However, we have the ability to learn from and support one another through our struggles and successes. I've spent many hours, days, even years feeling quite alone in my struggles with my functional GI disorder, but I hope that sharing my story with you today will help you know that you are not alone. As far as I can tell, I was born constipated. No, my mother never told me that, but I can't remember not being constipated. I have vivid recollections of tear-filled episodes in the bathroom, my mom on the phone with the doctor, begging him to help me go. Once, he suggested a suppository. 10-year-old me wanted nothing to do with that once I found out what it was. I've also always struggled with food. I am Greek, and big meals were common. This did not work for me at all. I spent most of my life hearing constant variations of, "Why don't you eat more? You're too skinny. You eat like a bird," from all of my family. I hated it. Apparently, they viewed my food intake like this. In reality, I ate all the time, and my favorite snack was ice cream with lots of chocolate syrup. But big meals just weren't my thing. I just ate small things all day long. Despite my apparent lack of appetite, I was athletic and always moving, and I was a gymnast for 8 years. When I was 8, I had a traumatic experience that impacted the rest of my life in ways that I'm only recently fully understanding. On a family trip to Florida, a girl vomited all over me in the back of our car. It was a complete nightmare. And from that, I developed what I now know is called emetophobia, or a fear of vomiting. During college, my GI problems reared up again. I was so constipated that I would tear and bleed when I tried to have a bowel movement, and I developed hemorrhoids that were very painful. I also started to feel sick quite often, but I could not figure out any one cause. I didn't ask a doctor or my parents for help. Instead, I started trying to fix it myself. I decided that drinking pop was giving me stomach aches, so I stopped drinking it. Then I started self-medicating, carrying around a bottle of Pepto-Bismol to drink when I felt sick. Nothing made it better. I just figured this was how my life would be. Around 2005, I began to feel bloated and sick after eating even a small amount of food. So I finally saw my very first GI doctor. He determined that I needed my gallbladder out and that I should avoid red meat and fatty and fried foods. He also gave me my first official diagnosis of IBS. He did not say what subtype, nor did he offer much in the way of solutions. Things did not get better. Over the next 10 to 15 years, I began to slowly feel worse and worse. The episodes, as I came to call them, became more frequent. Constipation, diarrhea, bloating, then periods of feeling fine. I kept functioning, though, not seeking answers from doctors or anywhere else. I also experienced increasing anxiety. I sought counseling on a few occasions and started taking an antidepressant. It helped my anxiety, but I still did not seek help for my GI problems. My episodes got steadily worse and more frequent. For instance, on a trip to Arizona in December of 2018, I spent most of one night crouched on the hotel bathroom floor, sweating and shaking, nauseous and scared, praying I would not vomit and that it would just go away. Through the next year, these episodes became more random. They would appear out of nowhere in the middle of the day or wake me out of a sound sleep. I was getting scared, so once again, I decided to work on finding my own solution. In July of 2019, I stopped taking my antidepressant after 10 years. I thought maybe it would help. It didn't. I also discovered the low FODMAP diet and figured eliminating possible trigger foods might help. It didn't. By September of that year, I began to lose weight and I went to see my second GI doctor. I had a colonoscopy that showed no organic problems and was told, once again, that I had IBS and to manage it with diet. By October, I had lost 5 pounds and food was a constant stressor. I was afraid to eat, but not eating wasn't helping me feel less sick. Finally, in January 2020, I called the University of Michigan GI department. Their first available appointment was at the end of March, but because of COVID, my new GI doctor never saw me in person. He started me on some medications, including Remeron and Linzess. Based on my symptoms, he said that I likely had IBS with constipation and pelvic floor dysfunction. I had never heard of that before, but he was right. During May of 2020, I had another colonoscopy, an EGD, an abdominal CAT scan, and an abdominal X-ray to try to figure out what was wrong. At the end of May, I went to the emergency room because I discovered, severely constipated. I stayed for 3 days and had an anorectal manometry study and a defecography done. Those tests showed that I definitely had pelvic floor dysfunction. Pelvic floor dysfunction is the inability to correctly relax and coordinate your pelvic floor muscles to have a bowel movement. The next several months are kind of a blur, but by June, I had dropped to 80 pounds. I was severely malnourished, constantly sick and in bed, and generally not functioning. I could hardly eat, and even when I did, I felt sick and feared vomiting. I was emaciated and struggled to do basic things like shower or cook or clean. I was frustrated and depleted and scared. I kept thinking I could handle it, that it would somehow get better, but it didn't. Every aspect of my life was impacted: my work, my parenting, and all of my relationships. Finally, on June 25th, 2020, I checked myself into the hospital. I was there for a week. While I was there, I had many tests done, including a gastric emptying study, and I had an NJ feeding tube placed. This fed right into my deepest fears of vomiting because they thread the tube up your nose, down your throat, through your stomach, and into your small intestine. The next week in the hospital was one of the hardest of my life. I cried all the time, and my body did not like the liquid nutrition I was receiving, so I felt sick constantly. I spent the next 7 months on a 24-hour liquid tube feed, which provided enough calories to survive. My weight gain was incremental and painful, and I had to have the tube replaced 3 times. I spent most of these months with what I came to call my team of doctors, including my GI doctor and nurses, a dietitian who specializes in GI disorders, physical therapists, a GI psychologist, a trauma therapist, and a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I had a new mini pharmacy of medications, and in August, I slowly restarted the antidepressant, which helped immensely. Apparently, stopping it in 2019 may have led to the worsening of my IBS-C. I learned that our guts have more than 30 neurotransmitters and that 95% of the body's serotonin is found in the bowels. I learned about the gut-brain axis and practiced gut-directed hypnotherapy. I also began 5 months of biofeedback and pelvic floor physical therapy. I slowly relearned how to eat solid food, though I often felt terrible. There was no such thing as a good day, only less bad days. In early February 2021, I reached my goal weight and weaned off the tube feed. Happily, I maintained my weight and had my tube removed on March 3rd. I still have a long way to go, but I continue to heal both physically and mentally. I can't easily summarize all I have learned over the last 18 months, but I will try to hit the highlights. First, I have learned how small your world can become because of your functional GI disorder. We likely have all experienced this in one way or another. It's not easy to begin to expand my world again, but I work on it daily. I've learned that you need to listen to your body, especially when it comes to medicine. Instead of jumping into full dosages of medication, I started small and built up, and it helped me so much. Along with this, I learned patience. I've always had high expectations of myself, but I've learned to slow down and give myself credit for what I have accomplished. I've learned to seek out valid, reliable, research-based sources of information, including organizations like IFFGD. I've also learned that whenever possible, we should find and enlist the help of qualified professionals instead of trying to fix our GI disorders on our own. We must keep looking for people who will truly listen to us and understand that the answer may need more than a handout and have the knowledge and desire to find answers and resources. I have learned that you must advocate for yourself, sometimes loudly, to ensure you get the best care you can, to be heard and to be understood. Perhaps most importantly, I have learned that I'm stronger than I ever realized. I did not get to where I am today alone, and I will be eternally grateful to my family, friends, and innumerable medical professionals who helped to get me here. But I made it through situations I never thought I could, and I'm stronger for it. Having and living with the functional GI disorder is part of who I am, but I believe I don't need to let it define me, and I'm hopeful about making my life bigger than it has been for the past few years.